Coming to you from Star Studios in Calvert, Texas, this is Coffee with a Sign Painter, podcast hosted by me, sign painter Sean Starr. Our groovy intro music was written and recorded for this show by Fergal Lawler of the Cranberries. Thanks, Fergal. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning.
So we're talking today with Mike Satterfield of the Gentleman Racer, which is probably what he's best known for, and you do a lot of other things.
Yeah, kind of best known for the Gentleman Racer, but dabble in a lot of different types of things, from events and apparel and all kinds of things. Whatever catches my fancy, really.
And what is the Gentleman Racer?
So Gentleman Racer is kind of a lifestyle website and magazine publication where I just kind of share the stuff that I'm interested in, cars and travel and history and all kinds of just whatever really captures my attention is what I write about.
Okay, cool. And last year, and there's the train, last year was the first Groesbeck Grand Prix.
Yeah, the Groesbeck Grand Prix was a big undertaking, a lot of fun. We hosted it out at Old Fort Parker, which is this historic pioneer fort in Groesbeck. And yeah, it was a fun event. We had a time trial and a classic car show and a lot of weather issues and stuff like that, but it was a lot of fun.
So, if I understood it correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, but part of it's modeled after that Goodwood Festival in the UK, correct?
Yeah, that was kind of the concept, was to create a motorsports festival where people could see these classic cars in motion. A lot of people go to car shows. Almost every town here in Texas has a car show on the square. But we got some really unique cars together to run down this closed public road and have the car show aspect and all that, but also let people see these cars in motion. So
yeah, well, it was really cool. I mean, especially for the very first inaugural one, I was really happy to see it all come together. There's people from all over that came and participated. It was a good event. I'm looking forward to it growing.
Yeah, we're meeting and trying to work out some details for 2021, looking at some possible venue changes just for logistics-wise. We had, as the event grows, that area is so limited with parking and things like that we're looking at some other options. It's a really cool facility, and we hope that we can make it work there. We're talking to some other property owners about borrowing their fields for parking so we can have other entrances to the event. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. We're excited about 2021. I mean, last year, even with all the stuff going on, we had over 400 people from as far away as California and North Carolina come out. So it was a pretty good event.
Yeah, cool. I enjoyed it. A lot of the people that listen to this show are involved in creative pursuits professionally, not just like, hobby artists or whatever, but, there's designers, sign painters, obviously, different people working in the arts. And I thought it would be interesting to hear your perspective as someone who... you kind of invented something out of thin air. You really into cars, you're really into all this stuff, and then you kind of turned that into a way to make a living and keep doing it. And I think that's a subject a lot of people that listen to this are interested in, is how, and it's a subject I think right now that's even more important to examine as people are trying to sift out, where do I go from here after a whole year of craziness, and there's still plenty of areas in the world that are still shut down. But I thought it would be helpful to talk about that as far as I guess maybe even put it in the perspective of if you were starting today. What would you do? Where would you start if you were trying to kickstart either Gentleman Race or just some other kind of creative venture?
Yeah, so my background was always kind of in the marketing and creative side of that, graphic design and ad layouts and all that stuff before I started working on my own, which I've been basically fully self-employed since 2007. kind of made that choice to kind of jump out there and do that. I think that the biggest thing that people should know is that there's a transition that happens where you decide that you're going to treat it like a business and actually treat it like a job and plan and do things where it crosses over that hobby line. And I think that's the biggest thing that I would have probably tried to have done sooner, was some organizational structuring and some things like that to make my life easier, like, bringing in like an invoicing systems and all the stuff. The infrastructure would let me do what I really wanted to do and have all that kind of stuff operate in the background. That's one thing I think a lot of people miss out on, and what holds them back is that they end up kind of burying themselves in all the busy work of keeping things going instead of just investing in some tools to really make their life a lot easier. And it's amazing how much opportunity there is out there. I think that's one of the biggest things when I talk to young people that are interested in either we do apparel, so we have a lot of people reach out about doing apparel and things like that. I get people who ask about starting as a writer or a photographer and breaking in. And there's a young guy that writes for me sometimes that I have as a contributor, and he's always asking me, what do I do? And it's like, well, one, stop going and looking for a job. There's a lot of people that are built to be great employees, and that's one thing I think you have to kind of self-assess: is are you internally motivated enough? Are you,
insane enough
to want to take on full responsibility for your life 100%, because that's really what it comes down to, is that there's no one scheduling my stuff, there's no one booking my flights, there's no one doing all the stuff for me. Like when I worked for a corporate big auto group, I had people that just booked everything for me, and I just showed up, and it was a whole different world. Jumping out on my own, I've got to figure out all the tax stuff and just all the things that go into running a full business. And there's so much opportunity out there. I think people have to really determine, first off, am I really entrepreneurial enough to do it? Or do I just need to go find a job at a great company that's going to handle all that stuff for me and give me the creative control to go do the things that I want to do within their company? There's a lot of companies that do that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You mentioned something that triggered. Last night we watched on Netflix that documentary about Notorious B.I.G. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was really interesting. That's like the one music genre I know nothing about, never explored. I've explored everything else, and I've just never really been into rap or hip hop stuff. But I wanted to see his story, and there's this point towards right before he blows up and becomes, this world icon thing, that was really interesting, where he was dabbling in selling drugs on the street and stuff, and then he would go and do some rap stuff, and then he would go back to do selling drugs, and he kind of hit this fork in the road, and I don't know all the characters. I think it's Puff Daddy was the guy who was I don't think he goes by that anymore. But he pulls him aside and he's like, look, if you keep going this route, you're going to end up dead or in jail. Or you can commit fully to doing the music, and we'll just keep going at it until it hits, because I know it'll hit. And so, he was kind of at this breaking point, and was like, okay, I'll listen to you and I'll do it. But it was really interesting, because I thought immediately of so many people that have gone into sign painting over the years, that once you hit that fork in the road, you have to go all in.
Yeah.
You have to completely commit and just be even if I'm living off ramen noodles for the next 10 years, this is what I'm doing. This is my identity, everything. I'm a sign painter. And that falls in line with what you're saying.
Yeah, 100%. You have to understand, I guess, prepare mentally that you are going to have those ramen noodle months. You're going to have contractors contracts that you do that they don't pay you for 60 days past due. All these things you have to kind of prepare yourself to handle that. And a lot of people, I think, don't adequately prepare for that, so that it kind of blows them away and it discourages them, and it takes them off the market really quickly.
Yeah.
When they're literally maybe one or two gigs away from it hitting. And I think that's the biggest thing I try to always share with people is like, one, if you can work for yourself, do it, because you'll have the freedom, the flexibility to do the things that you need to do, but also just prepare yourself that there's going to be a lot of hard times, and you could be going gangbusters for 10 years, making money hand over fist, and then there's something that just happens, a pivot,
pandemic,
a pandemic, something, anything. Yeah, I mean, anything that happens, and all of a sudden, all that work just goes away. And I mean, in our apparel side of it, we saw it. We've been around doing apparel since 2002, roughly 2003. And we've seen it come in waves where new technology hits. People can buy these inexpensive printers. They're all going to go start their own shirt company, and within a year or two, they all go out of business because they aren't really structured like businesses, and they're not running. Right. But for that year, they're absorbing all these other little things that were like kind of bread and butter gigs for our business. And just understanding there's an ebb and flow to things, I think, is really important for people who are going to jump out on their own. There's nothing guaranteed, and as your own boss, you've really just got to kind of just keep digging through and wake up each day and move forward and find that next thing and just keep pushing.
Yeah. One of the most valuable things I was taught by my dad, who I learned everything from originally, was to not get in the trap of creating overhead for yourself, unnecessary overhead for yourself. And I've talked to so many other sign painters, some of them who'd been, painting for 50 plus years, and they all said the same thing. Like, no matter how good things get, don't overextend yourself, because it's all going to be followed by a recession or whatever. There's cycles to all of this stuff. And, I think especially now, as people are trying to regroup and figure out, okay, what do I do going forward? What do I want to do with my life? I think I've mentioned this a couple times now in recent interviews, is if you take it as such, 2020 can be a gift, because it allowed a lot of people, I definitely saw it in myself, of just over the last 10, 15 years, just being constantly running, next job, next project, now I got to fly here and go do this, now I got to drive up here, to get that kind of forced slowdown, to regroup, reprioritize, figure out, okay, what do I really want to be doing, and what did I start this all for to be doing?
Yeah, and I really feel that it kind of shook out too a lot of the pretenders that were in a lot of industries. I mean, in the independent media side, my competitors range from everyone from, the mom blogger down the street who is writing a story about a road trip, to Car and Driver magazine. So I've got a huge swath of competitors at all different levels, because everyone's competing for the same clicks and that time and all this stuff. But it shook loose a lot of the people that were doing it as a hobby or part time, and that when they weren't getting the steady flow of sponsored content or things like that were paying them for their time, they just kind of stopped. And we saw a lot of sites. 2020, they just went away. And that's the thing, being able to not overextend yourself and have the resources to get through some of these low points. In all of our businesses, we've kind of taken that. We pay cash for our building, we save up and make sure that we own our machines and our equipment and things like that, so we don't have these leases coming due that are $1,500 a month, and all of a sudden we don't have the money to make that payment. Now we can't produce anything because our machines are getting seized. So we've really taken a very conservative approach to how we built our businesses over the years and how we're moving forward. We're renovating our building now in Groesbeck, and it's we saved up. We made sure that we had the resource to do it, and we're paying cash for all the renovations so that we don't have to worry about having a mortgage on that building. So if we do have those lean months, I can pay payroll instead of having to choose between the two.
Yeah, and that's a whole other animal. Is when you get into employees, most sign painters and a lot of designers, just one man show, go out there, work project to project. But I think having lived and worked through multiple ups and downs with recessions and different periods, which you're, for the most part, you're creating signs for business owners. So whatever the wave is, up or down, you're riding that wave right along with everyone else. And it's going to be really interesting going forward to see where it all goes. I mean, I think that there's a good possibility that people kind of shake off, a really hellacious year and, start to rebuild. It's the human, it's who we are.
Yeah, I mean, people will move forward. I mean, in any of these situations, do it with people who obviously come out better than other people sometimes. So, I mean, I think one of the biggest traps a lot of people that are entrepreneurs or independent contractors fall into is comparing themselves, especially now with the internet and social media and all that stuff, is comparing where they're at to fantasies that are on the internet.
Yeah, fantasies is the right word too.
And
because,
that's the thing. Yeah,
you've met them as well. Is you'll see people with these social media feeds that just look like they're killing it and they're on top of the world and all this stuff, and then you get to know them or spend any time with them, and you're like, wow, this is all smoke and mirrors. You don't have anything going on.
Yeah, they're paycheck to paycheck, and everything's financed to the hilt. And and I mean, any creative endeavor, it's really difficult because so much of our, like when I design a shirt that's going out there, I mean, a lot of our apparel is based on family history. So, like, our brand Original Cowgirl is all based on my great-grandmother, Anna Jo, and her kind of adventures in northern Texas, like Amarillo to, like, Red River and her home in Prescott. So it's kind of got a feel to it. So sometimes you design stuff, you put it out there, and, you're putting something very personal out there, and it doesn't hit. And you know how that goes. We all know how that goes. And I think what separates the people who make it and the people who don't is that they just pivot and roll and the next thing out, and keep moving forward. And it's just what you have to do in all these situations, is just continually put out your best and just keep moving forward.
Yeah, and designers and sign painters, I think the difference in the almost, I won't say disadvantage, but I think other business owners would probably view it as a disadvantage, is, most of us are not motivated by money. We're motivated by working on projects that creatively challenge us. A lot of us take into consideration who we're working for, who's calling, and if we're busy and someone calls who's there's just no juice there to do the project, a lot of us will just be like,
yeah,
I don't have time for that right now. If you got bills to pay and the electric bills due, then maybe you'll take it. But and that's what I'm interested to see too, is because I know in my case, and I've been very fortunate, of getting a lot of media coverage and a lot of really high-profile projects and really cool opportunities that honestly shouldn't come to anybody working in a trade that's what I mean, it just doesn't make sense. But like, to a certain extent, I'm done. Do you know what I'm saying? There was so much usury, in a way, over the last 10 years by big companies who latched onto some of us and kind of used us to tap into, like, oh, we're authentic. We're using sign painters, and we have this artist designing this thing, and he's going to paint it in our whatever, And some of these are like major household name worldwide companies that, we've worked for. And now I'm just like, none of those people were, calling up and being like, hey, I'm sure you guys are having a tough time right now. Would you like to work on this or that? It's all. And at the time, I knew they were using us. I use that to my advantage. That's why we were able to move down here and get this building and everything, is because I had saved up and was like, okay, I'll cash out a little bit and sell out a little bit and do these projects so that I can get in a situation to where I can now say, like, to a certain extent, I'm out, in the sense that I'm really not interested in working with these big companies anymore.
That's kind of what I decided after 2020 with the Gentleman Racer was, I wasn't going to give press and coverage to companies that weren't supporting the site in at least the most basic ways, like we automotive companies that won't even loan us a vehicle for a photo shoot or let us tell an authentic story around their product. If you just want to send me your press releases and expect me to just run it in the hopes that one day you might buy an ad from me or one day, you know, and that's what a lot of people do. And I mean, I've had some tough conversation with some major global brand managers that said, hey, you know, we sent you these press releases. Why aren't you running this on XYZ? I said, because you haven't done anything to support me at all.
Yeah.
In any way. And I looked at it like, if you're not even willing to let me create authentic content that'll at least generate ad revenue because it's a unique story, why should I give my time and energy and effort and audience your basic PR press release? And a lot of it runs through, and it's probably the same, a lot of the same group of people, because the PR and marketing all kind of I find so much of it just gets filtered through New York and Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And then it gets filtered through an intern who's at that company, who's calling you up and going, yeah, we really want to like this authentic, really awesome like artwork on the side of a taco truck. Can you come out and do this for us? And you're like, yeah, I can do that, but what's the concept? And they have no idea. They have no idea like what they're trying to recreate. They have no idea what story they're trying to tell. And I like I said, I've been pushing back, and we've actually had some really good conversations with some brands that are just like, yeah, okay, yeah, we understand we need to tell stories. I mean, I just had a nightmare scenario with a brand that we did a deal with that, you know, pitched the concept. Concept was telling a story around their product in a way that would really resonate with my audience. And it was so obnoxious because after the contract was signed, they then are pushing all this stuff and essentially expected me to lie to my audience, pretend that I had an ailment that I didn't have to promote this product line. And I told them, pound sand.
Yeah.
And they could not understand. Well, look, we're buying an ad from it. I said, no, you hired me to tell a story that was authentic, was going to work for your brand and connect with my audience. And instead, you sent me over a bunch of marketing speak and inserted me into it.
Yeah, lots of manipulation. I experienced the same thing with I'll just say a international pizza chain and leave it at that.
Sure.
Who, among other things, wanted to send this film crew down to film me painting the storefront windows of one of the locations, and they were going to do this whole big ad campaign on it. And then they wanted to, and I said, well, this is cool. I said, you know, there's sign painters. I've got friends all over the country. There's sign painters all over the country. You know, you could do a thing where you've got, you know, let's say you're in Chicago. You can hire Right Way Signs, and you can have them paint all of your locations in the Chicago area. This will be good for everybody. Oh, no. There's only going to be one painted. And I'm like, okay, what is your angle here? Like, what are you thinking? And they're like, well, we're just going to go ahead and print up a bunch of decals and, you know, have those put up on the glass. But we want you to paint this because we're trying to rebrand ourselves as being that we make handcrafted pizzas. And I'm like, but you don't make handcrafted pizzas. Like I said, isn't this stuff all like literally trucked in and basically they assemble a pizza, but no one's making a handcrafted pizza. And they're like, yeah, but that's our new marketing angle for going into this year and all this stuff. And I'm just like, there isn't any way in a million years I'm on board with this. This is terrible. I said, this is a lie. You're going to lie to everybody, and they're going to know you're lying, and then you're going to have me on your video screen for this national commercial, like lying with you. Like, I don't want nothing to do with this.
Yeah, and I run into it all the time with these marketing groups.
I'm sure.
It's super, super obnoxious. It's like, you know, and I've talked at A&A, which is the big marketing thing. I've talked to CEOs and marketing directors at big national companies. We've worked with like global 500 companies with the site telling stories around products, and the amount of people who don't seem to understand authenticity. Authenticity needs to be authentic. Like, you actually have to have, like, Michael go out and tell the story that he would tell around your product. And yeah, give me some guardrails, like don't say this or don't say that. You know, that's fine. We all have those things. Like, you have some branding things you want to work in. That's one thing. Just like I'm sure the painting company, you know, the company that hired you said, here's our colors, here's our color palette. This is kind of a rough concept, and it would interpret it. So many of them just want to latch onto whatever the creative person has and think that they can just manipulate it, and it doesn't work. I mean, I've had this conversation with multiple brands. Like, you give me, you know, stock photos and a storyline, and it'll perform at X amount of, you know, views. And then, let me go just tell a story in the way that I would, like around a road trip or a destination or some historical artifact or something that's interesting that ties into your brand, and include your brand in that story. Something that standalone people will read because it's an interesting story, and it performs like 15, 16, 1700% better. And they go, well, yeah, that sounds good, but can you just still run our press release and our stock images? And they don't care.
You know, it's so systemic, though. It's like it's in every aspect of our lives now. Like, the corporations have taken over. I mean, and that's no news.
Yeah.
We've all known that for years, but it's so obvious now that it's like everything is manipulated. And, you know, I think in a way it's one of the roles of people involved in creative pursuits in the arts is to, you know, it's time for the rebellion.
Well, 100%. I've had this conversation with a lot of either photographers or writers or other people that do creative design work and things like that, is that you just have to start pushing back. And if enough of us actually push back and tell them, no, we're not interested in doing that. You're not gonna saddle your Fifth Madison Avenue ad agency concept that, you know, again, has no basis in reality. And that's the thing that drives me nuts. I mean, I did a big project with a group that was doing some stuff with NASCAR and things like that, and the people that were in charge of these huge budgets for this, you know, major Southern and Central U.S. motorsport that's, you know, really followed in the South, had most of them never had been to a race. Most of them had never ever experienced it. Most of them had no clue what the culture was around it, and most of them openly expressed disdain for the customers that were there in the stands, calling them names and mocking them. And I'm going, these are your customers that you're trying to sell stuff to. You've hired me and you're paying me a shit ton of money to come here to tell a story around this, and you don't even invest your own time to get to know what you're trying to sell.
Yeah, and it is. It's time for, you know, all of us that, I guess, make things look good. It's time to stand up and just be like, nah, I'm not doing that no more, because it. You know, we've all contributed to the problem. I mean, not all of us, I suppose. I mean, if you've, you know, just been, you know, working on, you know, small projects for your buddies' businesses or something, there's, you know, that are small businesses, you know, maybe you dodged it. But so many sign painters, you know, when the Sign Painter movie came out and all of that, you know, that became an international thing, and so many sign painters that were established got dragged into, and, you know, and it was great in a sense that, you know, we all made some money that was kind of money that we were never able to make doing our normal stuff.
Yeah.
But to look at it now, and it's just like, you know, hindsight's 20/20. But to look at it now, I'm just like, man, you know, I'm just not doing that going forward. I'll work less. I will, you know, keep my bills low, and, you know, I'll jump on my motorcycle and, you know, do a 2-week moto camping trip before I'll, you know, oh yeah, okay, I'll get on an airplane and go up to, you know, XYZ and work like a madman for your crazy deadline and all this stuff. It's just like, I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah, it is always amazing to me that these like huge multi-million-dollar budget projects trickle down to like pay the actual people doing the physical work almost nothing. And they for some reason only have like a 2-week window. It's like on the high end of when they need to get stuff done. It's like, you guys have been planning this for 6 months.
Yeah.
You're calling me now and you're giving me 2 weeks to execute this whole entire thing. It's
and you know, like I mentioned earlier, you know, of all of these large scale, high profile companies that I've worked for and, you know, jumped through a lot of hoops for over a decade, like crickets all last year.
Yeah.
And I still got through fine, but part of the reason was I'd already changed my mindset and, got more into the, lettering on vintage vehicles like I like to do. Those are just individual collectors and stuff. And I almost everything I'm doing now is just for small business owners again.
Yeah, I mean, other than our kind of filler content on the site, we kind of, again, started doing the same thing. It was just focusing on telling more unique stories and cutting off these brands. I mean, like one of the guys I talked to, I was like, look, I put in a request for 6 months to get this vehicle to tell a story that's really unique around your vehicle. And you guys screwed me over. Like, I literally planned this entire thing. Shoot, I had other people involved. I had a ranch we were going to use for this whole overlanding type of adventure. Uh-huh. And it's like, you guys just pulled the plug on it because you had to move the vehicle for another thing. I'm done. And they're like, well, yeah, we'll still send you press photos and all this stuff. You can still write a story up. I was like, I'm done. Like, you guys aren't even going to support me to go and tell. Like, I wasn't charging them for that story. I was trying to tell a really unique story I thought my readers would enjoy.
Yeah.
And I pointed out some of the people that had the vehicle that had no followings, had no one reading their stuff, that were literally chosen just because they checked boxes off.
Yeah.
And what I found so frustrating was I have to go through probably 5 or 6 layers of bureaucracy to actually talk to someone who can make a decision. And while I'm having this conversation, like literally on the phone with the guy at this brand who can actually make a decision, he's really apologetic and he was really disappointed that the story wasn't going to get done, but it was made like 4 decisions down from him that someone just made the call. I get an email from their PR department with another press release that they're, well, I hope you love to run this. Please send us a link when it's live. I said, look, I just got another message from your PR department when I can't even get you guys over weeks to answer me on creating content for you. So,
but it is the symptom of the whole corporate structure, which is all about, it's all centered on profit. I mean, they're by law, they are required to put profit before everything else for their shareholders. And the disconnect between, and I'm not saying all corporations are bad. I have an iPhone, like whatever. We still have to live in the real world. I'm not extreme with any of that stuff because it is what we have available to us, kind of a thing. And I know there's other people who are like, well, let's go boycott, blah. It's like, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is just this. The one thing that we can choose is our culture. That we ourselves are living by. Like that's the one thing that is up to us, that isn't being force fed to us, or being we're able to wake up every morning and say, how am I gonna approach my day? Like, what's going on in my head? That's what I mean by culture. And it's time to rebel. It's time to just be like, I know that you've told me since I was born that, like, this is how you succeed, and this is the car you should drive, and this is, all of the things that we've been told are the right choices, and, you'll be successful if, that kind of nonsense. And the only way I think things are going to shift or change is if, and especially the storytellers and, the creative people that are putting the visuals out there, is to just John Galt it and just be like, no, I'm not going to do it,
I mean, that's why I'm so hopeful about, again, and a lot of stuff that I'm able to do wouldn't happen without these giant corporations. So I agree, but leveraging their platforms and those resources to tell stories, I think, is so important. And I think that's why, sites like mine, last year was probably the biggest year for traffic for my site, 2020, mainly because people were probably home, had nothing else to do. But also, I think one of the things that really kept my site kind of on track and, the publication was, didn't go political. Every single thing, I mean, automotive media, everyone was getting some type of political, and I just want to tell stories. I'm really not wanting to be a political person,
right?
And especially, I'm telling stories about a mini sub or a vintage car race or something like that. There's no reason to inject those things into it. And so many of the sites that I've seen that have kind of imploded is that they somehow found a way to work that into it. And I think people were honestly so burned out on the 24/7 politics from all sides. Everything is political.
Totally.
And I think that was one of the biggest things that really helped us grow last year was that just myself and the couple of the contributors I had, we had a meeting, we sat down and said, hey, look, we all have our political opinions. We all have our political leanings. We all have who we vote for and all those things. So that's great. What does it have to do with a 1954, shoebox? What does it have to do with that? If there's a political angle to it, like, hey, this law passed and affects, classic car legislation, that's about as political as we got. And we actually would get messages from people that were just like, hey, we're so, we love this content. We're just so glad that we can go somewhere and just read about cars or read about road trips and read about that stuff. And I think that's the other thing too, is that we've kind of allowed ourselves to fall into that trap of what a lot of corporate media has done, and it's warped a lot of people's perspectives about what matters. And in the grand scale of things, my entire life, who was the president didn't affect things all that much in my daily life. Like the idea that we've tied so much to this, political identity that everyone has is I think damaging, and I think it's limiting a lot for a lot of artists who feel like they have a lens they have to kind of serve. And that's the kind of cool thing about sign painting. I think you guys get away with that a little bit because you're like, hey, paint a Dr. Pepper sign. Okay, I'll paint a Dr. Pepper sign. Yeah. Or reproduce this vintage race car's original livery. That's great. But I think for a lot of creatives, there has been a lot of stress, and how we kind of navigated that was just by not engaging.
It's super stressful because it's a minefield, And I decided the same thing with the reboot of the podcast. Was like, I don't want that to be part of the narrative, like you said, everyone's got their own view and who they vote for or they don't vote or whatever it is. That has nothing to do with sign painting. That has nothing to do with creative pursuits, in my opinion. It's like it has no place in this dialogue to me. And I don't want it to turn into that, because that is divisive. And we've seen that on steroids over the last year. I know many people who have told me that they have friends that have stopped speaking to them right now because of slight variances in difference of view on certain subject matters. Not even like, well, I have this complete opposite view. They're just not completely aligned on something. And maybe they are on everything else. But this one particular issue, they're just not 100% on the same viewpoint. And their friends, like a lot of people have told me this over the last year, they have a lot of friends who have stopped talking to them and they won't interact on social media with them anymore and all this stuff. And I'm just like, this leads to absolute lunacy if we stay on that trajectory. Now, I don't want to contribute to it. With this, show, it's like my little sliver of voice in the world, which is tiny, but it's like I don't see that it's going to do any good.
Yeah, that's like I said, the same decision that we made with the site was just to let's tell stories about the things we like, and that's it. And I think that formula worked really, really well. We added some new kind of concepts to the site, some different things that were complementary, doing just different subject matter. And I think that there is so much opportunity for people in the independent media and independent art because of the leverage that we have now with the internet to, reach anybody. And one of the things I always tell like people who are coming to me like, how do I get started writing? It's like, just start writing about stuff. Just start sharing things you like. Because if you like it, there's an audience out there of people who like it too.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's, I don't know where we go from here either, in the sense that there's just so much content out there, and there's so much like people trying to like rig the game that there's so little heartfelt, real content out there now. You've got to really dig for it because there's just so much other noise. So, whether it's a podcast or a video or an article or whatever, you just have this mountain of stuff that you got to just be like, you start reading like you're 2 paragraphs in, you're like, oh no, this is just this is a poorly veiled advertisement for XYZ. This isn't even an article, you know? And there's so
Yeah.
much of that now.
Well, and I think that that's one of the things that you kind of have to accept is that you're going to have a smaller audience. Everyone wants that huge click-throughs. I mean, that's why so much of our mainstream media is, clickbait, crazy titles. You won't believe what they did, and you're like, okay. But I mean, that's why I can pick and choose the stories I want. That's why I work for myself, because I've got friends that work for some of these big publications, and they're literally sitting in an office in New York. Well, probably at home now, but they were sitting in an office in New York, 4 or 5 people jammed in this tiny space, and they had to write 8 to 12 stories a day based off whatever press releases were coming in off the newswire.
Oof.
So just that content mill of constantly cranking out stuff you don't care about, it's got to kill you.
Yeah.
And, I would rather, like you said, I'd rather go out and tell a story about a road trip, to Williams, Arizona, and go shoot actual photographs of it, because people respond to that, and people like to read that, and people will share that. And I like to think that I haven't really created a lot of the clickbait content that, I never, I guess, had a story that was shared because it was like divisive and it was being shared like, you won't, screw these guys, I like that my stories get shared because people see value in them, and people like the photography, and people like the destination, or they like the perspective on things. And you just got to kind of keep putting that out there. It cuts through the noise eventually, and you find your kind of core audience, and they really become your evangelists and push it out there to the rest of the world. And it is noisy out there, but again, we've seen it with all these big publications with their massive layoffs. And there's one of our biggest competitors is a big website that's part of another group of websites, and they've lost $152 million in like 5 years. How? I don't know. But
Holy smokes.
They get bought out. They lose $100 million. Another investment group comes in, buys them, repackages them, lays a bunch of people off, cranks out a bunch of garbage content nobody really wants to read. It's all clickbait. And then they lose another $50 million and get bought by another hedge fund. And it's just, people do respond to the clickbait stuff because there's that rage, that I'm gonna argue on the internet, people that'll always do that. But
the only answer is integrity.
Yeah.
It's always comes back to that. Like, as human beings, the only thing that ever really stands test time and matters is integrity. Like the minute that people set aside whatever their passion was that got them into something, and it all becomes about money, like it just turns to crap and no one wants it.
Yeah. And there's obviously money does make the world go round. You do the fun things, but being able to be independent and pick and choose those things, even who advertises, even who buys ads on our sites and things like that, we have a lot more flexibility to kind of control that integrity aspect of it. I've got so many friends who I talk to that are part of the writers associations and photographer groups that just are so numb now because they've been for so long cranking out content that they're really not passionate about. But they've got a mortgage and the car payment and all that stuff, so they're just gonna keep plugging away doing it.
So how do you change it?
Well, that's the one thing I keep encouraging people to do is just be independent. Even if you're working for someone else, if you have the ability, if you're not under some contractual agreements, start your own site, start sharing your own stories, start finding your own audience so that you can eventually, monetize it to yourself and get out of working for these big organizations. I think we see it when you look at some of the quality on some of these sites. And I never want to pretend like I'm the greatest writer in the world. I have tons of typos, and I've written stuff that I'm like, oh man, I got to rewrite that. That's not good. 5 years later, but the fact that I found an audience means that almost anyone can find an audience. And
if you have a pretty big audience, like you've told me before, how many people go to your site every month?
So we have roughly about 240,000 unique visitors a month that come to the website and read something there. Most people see 1 to 2 pages based on our analytics. And then social media wise, we through the stories being shared and things like that, we have about a 7 million a month impression.
Yes, so that's a
it's
big audience. audience.
It's a pretty big audience, but in the world of internet, it's a tiny audience.
Yeah.
But it's.
But I mean, if somebody was starting a blog today, they would kill for that kind of reach.
And that type of reach is enough to generate ad revenue and things like that. But I've been really more focused on who my demographics are and tailoring the content to my core audience, because those are the people that are going to share it and be more involved, and that's one thing that I think people have to really just make a decision about who they're writing for, what the kind of stories they want to share, and just do it. And again, if you have a job where you're writing for a big magazine, that's great, and I hope that works out well for you. But if you're not out creating your own content somewhere and sharing it and sharing the stories that matter to you, it's going to kill you just writing about, whatever assignment you get that week.
Yeah, soul sucking.
Yeah. For me, I like the fact that, I come down here, I did a story on you just because, this guy's super cool. He's doing really cool stuff in a small town that I pass through here in Texas. And that's a unique story. And it's one of the most viewed sites of stories of last year. People really responded to it, really enjoyed it because it was different. And there wasn't anyone else telling that story in my category, really. Mm-hmm. And that's what I like to seek out, is those unique stories that are different. I mean, I've got stories that'll sometimes pop back up from 2014 and be trending on the site because no one else has told it since then, and someone started searching for it, and then it got shared again.
It's interesting. I hadn't thought about it, but I've gotten a lot of different requests from different magazines, blogs, all sorts of things. And yeah, there is very few who've ever approached me in the automotive world about the work that I do on vehicles, which is a huge chunk of the work that I do in the studio. And I find that really strange.
Yeah.
And why do you think that is? Is it because either out of necessity or just is it because everyone is just focusing on, I'm going to do an article on the new, GPS that so-and-so made so that I can get, revenue for that? Or why aren't they seeking out interesting aspects of something like automotive, like the people behind the scenes that are part of the whole thing, as opposed to it? There's so much of it in the auto world when I go on, blogs or sites that's just products.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of it is budgetary, and a lot of it is driven by marketing. Who their audience of marketers are, and honestly, a lot of it. I've talked about this for years because I grew up working in the classic car industry. My dad still works and consults in the classic car industry. I built cars for the SEMA show. I've designed cars for that have been featured in magazines. I've been in the classic car world for a long time, and going back to one of my first jobs was working at California Mustang, and I was the youngest person working there. And I think a lot of it is that the classic car industry is really, really bad at reaching the younger audience. I mean, if you're a car guy and your dad's a car, it's usually because your dad or your mom was into cars and they had an old car, and then you like old cars. But that generation, it's kind of a I guess you'd say it's like attrition. It's just the industry's just going on, dying off. And a lot of it has to do, I think, with a lot of the Barrett Jackson mentality. Is that if I'm a kid and I'm flipping around, I kind of like cars. And I flip on the news or TV and I see a '65 Ford Mustang selling for $78,000 on Barrett Jackson. I'm going to think that's something that's unobtainable.
Right.
And I think that's one place where the classic car magazines, which almost all of them are bankrupt and gone. I mean, think about just 15 years ago, how many classic car magazine titles there were. Mm-hmm. I mean, Source, Interlink, and all those, and they've all been absorbed and bought out and absorbed and bought out. And I mean, Mustang. I mean, we used to advertise at California Mustang in probably 8 different classic Mustang magazines. Mm-hmm. And now there's none. There is classic Mustangs and Fords, I think.
The same thing is heading the same direction in the motorcycle world, in my opinion. I've stopped subscribing to motorcycle magazines. I really liked Adventure Rider and, all these different magazines that you could kind of and it's dwindled down to where it used to be the writer would be okay, I'm going to tent camp and ride this bike from here to here, and take great photos of like all these different spots. Those have dwindled down to like a little one-page blurb now.
Yeah.
And all of the rest is just, it's all product crap.
Advertorial.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can tell immediately, it's like, you don't give a crap about this. You're not trying to like share this, like this was a really great XYZ that you could get. It's just, okay, I'm basically paying and subscribing to a magazine that is just, I'm paying for them to advertise to me. This is stupid.
Yeah, and I'm kind of back to the original question of like, why has that happened? Why is no one seeking out these stories? Is that the budgets have shifted. I mean, nobody's marketing in those. I mean, Google and Facebook have absorbed pretty much all your ad dollars now. I mean, it's hard for me to sell direct ads on my site because people just rather, it's easier for, I mean, people are lazy inherently. You know, like, okay, I can go on Google, I can put in these parameters and I can pay them $5,000 a month instead of having to go seek out good content and learn websites and build relationships and say, yeah, this is a person who I'm going to advertise with because I like their content, I like what they're doing. And that's how it used to be in the magazine industry. I mean, I used to, do ad buying and do some of the advertising stuff with the classic car side of things. And we had an ad sales rep and we had all this infrastructure that was built in for advertising in print magazines. And that's all gone now because everyone's just shifted everything online. So print magazines, I mean, your revenue is just slashed. So they don't have a budget to pay someone a full salary to write a column once a month. They don't have they don't have a budget to send someone out here to take photos and spend a day with you. That guy's got to be writing 8 or 9 stories a day based on press releases for products that have been released to pump them out on the internet so that people who are searching for best motorcycle GPS will find their story maybe and click on that instead of clicking on the other 45 stories about best motorcycle GPSs. So that's when the shift is that the storytellers are still out there. It's just they're almost all independent now. And, I write for a couple other publications. A lot of them are pro bono because they just don't have the budget. But I like the publications. I see value in being in those publications and contributing to them and sharing stories that I care about in those publications, even if I'm not getting paid for them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in a situation where I can afford to do that. A lot of writers aren't, and it's sad because I know there's a lot of really talented writers out there that would love to be telling these really unique stories, but the funding mechanism isn't there, and again, like kind of going back to how everything shifted politically, like the political ads, the advertising cycle's done. So a lot of for the election, so ad revenues have dropped just after that. I mean, they dropped significantly during Even my site was seeing more political ads being placed to the AdSense and things like that automatically. So all that money gets absorbed out of it, and you kind of have this weird cyclical advertising thing that's really again driven by that political side of things and things like that. So a lot of these magazines that existed just are gone, and they don't have any funding to go tell those great stories anymore. I mean, there's very few publications. I mean, I subscribe to about 4 or 5 magazines still that I get. But I can tell you about probably 15 or 20 that good friends of mine or people that I know have started and put together these beautiful, really high-end magazines. But again, who wants to pay for content? I'm not going to pay $25 for this really nice, high-quality paper printed magazine when I can just, so I got an Alfa Romeo on the cover. I'll just Google 67 Alfa Romeo and read whatever comes up.
Yeah, no, I know. We're in a state of transition, too. Because of that, but yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty stubborn by nature.
Yeah,
it's just kind of like how I am, and I'm just at the point where it's like, this type of work's all I've ever known, and I made a decision in 2005 to just stubbornly, I'm going to open the studio that I have now, and I'm just going to only do hand-painted work, and I don't care if I starve, and I did, and I'm just at this point where it's like I just see so much stuff that has no heart and soul all around us, and I know I'm not the only one. Like, everybody senses it. You can have conversation with a complete stranger and bring this stuff up, and they'll just go on and on about it too. And it's just, it's not going to change until people like just stop participating. And I'm not going to participate anymore. It's just like there's so much awesome, like great stuff in life if you just get out there and do it, you know. And I'm just this whole thing that has become like what we call culture. It's not culture. It's just
it's consumerism.
It's consumerism. That's not culture.
Yeah.
Like culture doesn't require a financial exchange.
100%. Yeah, I look at that too. I mean, I've shifted a lot of my buying habits and things like that too, and just I look at it as, you know, do I need this? Am I going to have this in 5 years? I mean, I when I moved out to Texas, I did have a huge self audit of just all the stuff that I had.
Right.
And outside of like books, which I'm a huge book nerd, I've got tons and tons and tons, way too many books, a lot of art books and photography books and travel books. And I love having paper books and reading things. I did this huge audit, and I mean, I donated or threw away truckloads of stuff that was represented tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And I'm going, wow. And, you know, I looked at it, like I'd gone to Japan and was living over there for a while, and I'd come back and I was like, all that stuff sat in storage the entire time I was there. I missed none of it. Forgot
you had 90% of it till you opened it back up.
But we've really have kind of created this this juggernaut in our culture of, you know, you're only interesting as the last thing you're bought, and to me that is so damaging. I mean, one of the things I always kind of share about, kind of along those lines, is I love cars, but I hate car people.
Yeah.
And I say that because I love cars. I've had 140 different cars since I was 14, everything from old Austin Healey's to Alfa Romeos to Lancias to Zagatos and weird stuff. And for me, it was interesting about it was someone made this, someone designed this. There was something unique about each car. Even the worst car in the world had a whole team that made that car happen.
Yeah.
But like the people who their identity is tied to, I got a Pantera. Yeah, I'm the Pantera guy. And it was something that kind of clicked in my head when I was in the car business selling cars. We had this guy who was the Pantera guy, and he would come by at least once a month to the dealership, pull in, back into the front, and get out and wait for someone to come out to talk to him about his Pantera so he could validate himself for having.
Well, that's the other thing. That's a spiritual issue. You know?
Yeah.
Like you got ego way out of whack here, buddy. Like
totally.
Your car's not your identity.
But so many people, their vehicle, their job, their title, their status, that's kind of what we built our entire modern culture around, is like the things you have instead of the things you do and the things you create. And
that's why, like my first trip out to Nepal was in 2019 in the spring. And that was such an incredible recalibration for me. Mm-hmm. Because it really underscored what I had already been moving towards for several years, of just kind of getting my priorities straight and realizing like it's the experiences in life that count.
Yeah, 100%.
Like that's all that counts, really, because, you know, I mean, there's you can have anything crop up tomorrow, you know, a major health problem. You can have, you know, some financial calamity. You can have a death of a loved one, you know, whatever it is. And it's really all about the experiences that you're building in life with the people that mean something to you and all of that. That's all there is. And, you know, not to get too, you know, existential about it, but I mean that's really all there is. And so this lie that we've been told over and over and over for many decades, that life is this crap that you need to buy from us, like that's a lie on such a bad, evil level
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is you're taking away what's meaningful to people and telling them, no, you don't need that. You need this from us, and you need to send us $500, and then you're going to be happy. And of course, no one's ever happy
100%.
just trying to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I would always encourage everybody to do is travel more. And it doesn't need to be. Unfortunately, so many people like, oh yeah, I just can't afford to travel. It's like, well, yes, you can. It's really actually pretty cheap to travel, unless you're trying to book yourself a luxury resort and a brand new rental car. I was very fortunate that my parents really encouraged me to do service when I was younger. I was in Boy Scouts and did a lot of community service that way. But then one of the first things I did internationally was I did a mission trip to Nicaragua. Back in 1998. So it's been a while. And it was through a church group that we were affiliated with, and we were down building infrastructure in schools in remote parts of Nicaragua. And that really did kind of shift a lot of my thinking as growing up as a young adult, and I've worked with that organization now. I mean, I still currently work with them. Almost every single year I go back down there and work with them. And it's a whole different group of people now. But I think if more people would travel and go to actual places where people are smiling ear to ear, living in a dirt floor hut that's made out of flattened barrels, and they're enjoying themselves, and they're finding the joy in the simple things and their children, and also that connection of understanding that most people are pretty much the same. They all just want their kids to do better than they did. They all just want to be safe and left alone, and ability to create things and have their own lifestyle and all that stuff. I think that's a huge thing that a lot of Americans are missing out on. I think that's part of the symptom of this culture that we see of this just kind of shallow materialism that really makes people cling on to the wrong things and leaves them unfulfilled. And
you're making a very valid point. And to take it even one step further, you don't even have to go somewhere exotic.
Yeah.
Years ago, one of my first major moto camping trips, I was on a $400 Kawasaki 400 that I bought in 440 that I bought in San Francisco. That was my sole transportation for years because I was so broke. And I would drive all over, and I would camp on Bureau of Land Management land, which is free for every American citizen. If you don't know about it, look it up.
Yeah.
You can go camp there for free. So really all you're looking at is your gasoline to get somewhere, which may just be 100 miles down the road from you. You can go camp there for free, take along some cheap groceries, and there you go. There's a first excursion. But in the process, our country is so diverse and it has so many super interesting twists and turns of, little towns that were settled by people from this part of the world or that part of the world. It's all over Texas, too. There's so much out there, and people are so freaking interesting. Mm-hmm. You can just go to anywhere, and if you spend a little bit of time in some rundown cafe talking to the person next to you, you find all sorts of interesting stories surface, and all of that costs nothing really other than carving out a little bit of time, some gasoline, and make yourself some bologna sandwiches if you have to.
Yeah.
But you can do it. It's accessible. The long distance trips I did years ago and still do moto camping, they don't cost hardly anything.
Yeah, no, I 2016 was a big transitional year for me, and I decided to take a bunch of time off. And one of the things I did was, because of my website and because I can write, I actually arranged to borrow a motorcycle from a manufacturer and do a cross-country road trip on a 250cc Chinese-made motorcycle. But it was I kind of wanted to reproduce the trips that my dad took in the 70s, because my dad did a cross-country lap around America in the 70s on a Harley Sportster. And my grandfather, I have his jacket. He's passed away now, but I have his jacket, and it's got all of his ride pins from all over the 60s, from Mexico and the United States, all over the place. And so I wanted to kind of go and have that experience myself. And it was so much fun taking this little open face helmet, my grandfather's goggles, and a 250cc basically replica of a Honda CB series motorcycle, little cafe racer, and I just cruise back roads through Kentucky and West Virginia and Georgia.
There's this guy I subscribe to on YouTube, and right now he's currently doing this. He's done multiple round the world, long distance trips on a C90.
Nice.
And it's a total piece of crap, and he's still riding the same one. And right now he's going from Alaska to the southern tip of Argentina. And this bike, it couldn't have cost him more than $200.
Yeah.
But he's literally traveling the world and has been doing it for years and years. And he's this young kid from the UK, super goofy, awesome personality. But I've met and known people that have done like cross country. There's another YouTube channel that I follow of it's a husband and a wife and their kid, and they're traveling the world and tent camping on bicycles, and they're like in year 6 now or something.
Oh wow!
Like it, I think that's one of the great things that happened in our country in the '60s. As all these guys were coming back from Vietnam, disillusioned, stressed out, so many of them just like traveled for a couple of years like that. They just jump on a cheap old crappy motorcycle and they would just travel the country. And I think that's where we're at. Like, people need to just pull up stakes and be like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to go see some things. I'm going to experience life. I'm going to get out of the bubble, and it doesn't take a lot of money. I can do this on the cheap, and people need to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been a big proponent of people getting out of the major cities and revitalizing these smaller towns. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I bought my building. It's one of the reasons why you're here. It's like, there's so much opportunity in these smaller towns and so many stories and unique things you can see. And I mean, I don't understand how people don't have kind of an innate need to see things. I've always been kind of that way. Like, I want to see it all myself. I want to touch it. I want to feel it. I want to talk to people. I want to taste the food. I want to go those places. So I've been very fortunate that through some of my work and things, I've been able to travel all over the world and experience this stuff. But there has to be that almost spirit of adventure that needs to come back, like you're talking about, and just go out and just try things and visit places. And I think it would help our country a lot if people that, would get out of LA, New York, San Francisco, Portland, and just go visit a town of 4,000 people.
Yeah, and you'll realize something in the process too. Those people aren't nuts. They're not dangerous. They're not horrifying. Sure, they may have different views than you, whether it's political, religious, whatever, but they're normal, interesting, intriguing human beings that have something to share, and you'll get something out of it. And it would be thrilling to see people starting to do that, I think, because it'll unify people again too, and that's the huge thing we're lacking. Everybody hates each other over stupid stuff.
Well, I think we're seeing it a lot. I mean, I was just reading a story about the people are moving. I mean, people are moving all over, and for the first time in years, Texas and Florida have always been kind of the big destinations people move to, mainly like people retiring and things like that. But Tennessee was was number one last year of people moving from different states.
Was it really?
Yeah, Tennessee for the first time beat Texas and Florida out, and Boise, Idaho is growing like crazy, and all these places that were again flyover states. Yeah, exactly. Well, are places people are kind of rediscovering. And I'm like, I've been road tripping through these places for years. Yeah. They're really cool. I mean, I was, again, I think pretty fortunate with my parents. We had family in like Prescott, Arizona, and in Texas and all this stuff. So we would travel and visit family and cousins and stuff all over the place and kind of experience these small towns. So for me, it's just kind of always been a way of life. But I've got friends who are in their 30s now that, the farthest they've ever been from Los Angeles is Las Vegas, and they've never got off the freeway on the way there. And to me, I think if we can get more people kind of out and exploring, and I mean, visiting, I mean, the Southwest alone, just has so much to see.
Go out and take photos and post them.
Yeah.
And do it just for the pleasure of doing it and sharing it with your friends, and not try to turn it into some side hustle.
It doesn't need to be monetized.
Yeah, just like do something just that's cool that you can share with people, And I'm not just talking, because last night I took home my new Suzuki V-Strom.
Oh, cool.
Because I'm selling my Indian, and I'm going to equip the V-Strom, and I'm going to go back to doing the long distance rides every chance I get, because that's way better than trying to engage with all this chaos. Like, I'm going to continue to do my work, and I'm going to continue to like push myself creatively on all my projects and everything that I've always done, but I'm also going to I'm gonna like live more.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing you could do. I mean, we're in a society that is so constantly pounded with media and noise and all this stuff. And motorcycles are great because, you really can't take phone calls and all that.
Exactly.
You jump on it and kind of just disappear for an hour or two.
Unless you have like a mental illness and you decide to like get one of those smart helmets that can talk on your phone, it's like, nope, I'll put it in my pocket and I can answer it, 2 hours from now when I stop for gas.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the best thing about motorcycles, even in old cars too. I mean, I've got an old Austin Healey that we're working on, and that's the greatest thing about it. It doesn't have a radio, doesn't have Bluetooth, doesn't have all the stuff that is great. I love all that stuff, but every once in a while, you just kind of want to just go out on the road and clear your head. It's just so nice. That's one thing I love about Texas. I grew up in Southern California in the countryside, which is all now houses. So I love that I can literally drive 30 minutes and be in the middle of nowhere.
You can see a cow.
And see a cow and see the stars at night and all that stuff, yeah.
They're big and bright. Well, thanks for carving out some time. I know you're like a super busy guy. You're always running, doing something.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. I mean, it's always fun to come down and check out what's new at the studio. There's always something fun happening here.
Yeah, I got some cool stuff in the works. So
awesome.
Next time you come by, you'll be able to see some progress stuff. I just had a client drop off a old late 1800s safe that I'm going to do a full restoration on. That one's going to be a really neat one to work on, but it's going to take me months because you got all the prep and drying time between each stage. Safes take a long time.
Yeah, that's pretty cool though.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. All right, well, thank you.
Okay, Hep Cats. This is the part of the show where we play a song from the Arhoolie archive, so pay attention. You can get these tunes from the legendary Arhoolie Records at arhoolie.com. Now sit back, open up some One Shot, crank up the volume, and expand your minds, babies.
Hey, Earl Hooker.
Yeah, man.
Where you been so long, man?
Oh, man, I've been out there at 1919 West Taylor.
What you were doing out there, man?
Oh, man, I was out there messing around with Rand and Dr. Newhow, man. I had to get rid of them 2 bugs and that roach I had.
How you do that?
Oh, man, I hit it something like this, Jack. Yeah, baby.
Sound pretty good, Jack.
You know, if you don't get rid of that bug, man, that bug kill you.
Sound the same.
He's too heavy for me.
You getting down, brother?
I had to get down or get out of it or something.
That's what you call soul music.
That's right, baby. And that bug is soul, too.
Well, let me see you get a little funky with it now.
Okay, baby. This is where I got rid of that bug. But that bug kill you, man.
I'm hip to it.
You guys don't know what kind of bug that was.
What do you mean, what kind of bug? That's soul bug, that, brother.
Yeah, he'll take your soul, too.
You better believe it if you're not in damn shape.
That's right. like I'm gonna get rid of this bug now, baby.
Boy, I sure hate to see you cut it loose.
Yeah, but I gotta cut it loose, baby.
Man, that's a soul.
Yeah, he almost got my soul too, Jack.
You heard what Hurricane Brown said, soul me?
Yeah,
Wait a minute, that's soul up, soul down.
I hear you, baby.
It might get you down, but it sure the heck get you well.
Yeah, baby. Kill that bug, baby. That's where you kill that bug.
Man, that's saying something. You know, if I had that kind of bug, I'd hate to cut it loose, man.
Do you know what kind of bug that was, man?
What kind of bug was it?
That's that thing they call a TB bug.
Boy,
He was a
we had
monster.
this other kind of bug, you should not be in our country.
That's right, baby. I think we got rid of him, though. Ow! Kill that bug.